We had a great discussion last week. In order to understand what meditation is and how to meditate, we spoke about the makeup of the human being, namely the 10 faculties. So we spoke about the intellect, Chachma, Bina, and Dat, Chabad, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. We spoke about how the intellect influences the emotions, which is why meditation is so important. And then we spoke about the garments, which are the way we carry out our feelings and intellect through thought, speech, and action, which are the garments of our 10 faculties, the way we express ourselves. And then we went into a specific meditation. So if anybody missed the first week, we have the recording online if anybody wants to review it, where we did a meditation of focusing on positive thoughts so that we can produce positive feelings. And through producing positive feelings, we are able to remove, without pushing away the negative feelings, we're able to introduce, and the moment you put on the light, automatically the darkness disappears. Because the moment you focus on a specific idea, you're right away going to remove any idea that was in your head before. Doesn't mean you won't come back to it. But the more we increase positive thoughts, ultimately what is going to happen is we're going to get rid of and leave less room for negative thoughts. And the more we have positive thoughts, again, we have positive emotions. That whole idea that we spoke about last week, and the idea of meditation and recognizing our self and our faculties and so on, we're going to take this to a whole new level this week and recognize how through meditation we can actually uncover a spiritual awareness, one that is, again, deeper than the 10 faculties, one that is certainly deeper than the garments of our soul. And we will see the benefits, hopefully, of doing so. So we're going to go into a deeper level of meditation. We tell a story of this Zen master who was having his birthday, and his students bought him a gift. And as he opens up the box, as he looks inside, he sees there's nothing in there. You know what he says? This is just what I wanted. We tell a story about another Zen master who visited New York City. And he goes over to the hot dog stand. If he was Jewish, obviously, he went to a kosher one, right? So he goes over to the hot dog stand and he tells the guy, he says, do me a favor, give me a hot dog with all the fillings. This guy says, no problem. He fills up the hot dog, he gives him the hot dog. He says, how much is it? He gives him a $20 bill. And the guy puts the $20 bill in his pocket. He says, hey, 1 second, what's with the change? He says, change has to come from within. Okay, so what we really have to do tonight is appreciate what spirituality is. If we're going to meditate, and we're going to meditate on a deeper awareness, recognizing spirituality as a deeper awareness, we have to really understand what is spirituality. So in 2005, they did a survey of the meaning of spirituality, and they came up with 27 different definitions of spirituality. When you talk to people, everybody has their own definition of spirituality. For many people, spirituality is the abstract. But in order to appreciate what spirituality is, if there are 27 definitions of spirituality, the question is, what kind of definition do we take on? And obviously, this is a Jewish class, and we're going to define spirituality based on the Jewish definition. So what exactly is the definition of spirituality? So let's talk first about our default consciousness. We live in a world that is dominated by materialism. In fact, look around the room and everything you see is materialistic, right? Look around the world. Every area in our lives, we wake up in the morning, from the morning to night, a lot of our experiences are with the material world, which is because we are made up of a body, and our body has its needs and its function, and most of them relate to the material. So what we hear, what we see, there's also a focus in society, an emphasis on material gain and success. So not only are our needs, which are natural needs, based on materialism, but also what we're inspired most of the time by the media and so on, and books we read, et cetera, et cetera. It's our goals in the business world are very much related to materialistic things. So that is natural and very normal. When it comes to spirituality, different people react differently. So we go back to materialistic things. Tonight, I don't know about everybody who's sitting at home, but I know in this room, 4 out of 5 are sitting with a cup of either coffee or tea. Alan chose the cookie instead. With a bottle of water. Okay? So we all had a similar need, a material need that we had in order to make us more relaxed in the spiritual class that we're going to have tonight. So when it comes to materialism, so we all relate to similar things in materialistic things. Okay, this person likes coffee, this person likes tea, but we both like a drink. And our definition of materialism is very similar because our needs are very similar. We have to eat, we have to drink. Okay, Steve is on this diet and someone else is on another diet. Everybody has their thing, but we have our materialism we all relate to in the same way. So when we relate to spirituality, we all relate to spirituality differently. Okay? For some people, they don't think about spirituality at all. It's something that doesn't talk to them. And that's sort of what I was saying before. You know, when I offered this class, I said to some people, the idea of meditation might not be for you. Try it out. I really believe that to try anything out, you can't try it once. The mistake they made was they tried it once. And they'll come back to another class, which is fine. You got to try something twice. I did that when I introduced sushi to my wife. I had her try it a second time. So hopefully after this class, we'll enjoy meditation and appreciate it. Okay, so when it comes to spirituality, I know that everybody who's here tonight, spirituality is not something that is non-existent. It's something that we not only acknowledge, it's not only something that some people only recognize spirituality at times like birth or at times where there's inspiration when they went to a music festival or something where they could recognize that there's something beyond themselves, then they recognize spirituality. For others, it's recognizing, it's the comfort in knowing that there's something beyond us. But besides actually the knowledge and the comfort or the belief in something beyond, they don't really pay attention to spirituality. And the idea tonight and during this 6-week course is to be able to become more in tune with spirituality. But what are we focused on most of the time? Even for those who are spiritual or more spiritually inclined, most of the time we are focused on materialism, our material needs and reality, because that's how we survive, right? Okay, so the question is it possible to develop a sensitivity to spirituality? And the most important question that we haven't answered yet, we've spoken about people's connection to spirituality, people's connection to materialism, but we haven't discussed or answered the question of what spirituality is. What is spirituality? How do we define spirituality? So that's a very important question. In order to answer the question, I want to first give, as an introduction, a little story. A story that I've told before in similar classes. I believe in a JLI class. I've definitely told this story before. The story is about a Jew by the name of Rabbi Isaac of Krakow. Have you heard the story before? Mm-hmm. You know the story of Rabbi Isaac from Krakow? Mm-hmm. Rabbi Isaac from Krakow. Rabbi Isaac of Krakow is actually, there is a synagogue in Krakow that was donated by this Rabbi Isaac, and there's a story behind how this individual got money. He was a poor man, and one night he had a dream, and in his dream he was told that there is a bridge in Prague, which is not far from Krakow. There's a bridge, and under the bridge there's a treasure that's buried there. He woke up, thought nothing of it, but then he dreamt about this treasure once again. And then he had the dream a third time. After 3 times having the dream in a row, he figured it would be a good idea to travel to Prague and go check under the bridge to see if there's a treasure. So he says goodbye to his wife. He travels to Krakow. He turns up in Prague. He turns up in Prague with his shovel. He goes under the bridge. He starts to dig. And as he starts to dig, he's caught by some police officers in Prague. And they asked him, "What are you doing? Why are you digging under the bridge?" He says, "I'll tell you the truth. I had a dream, not once, not twice, but 3 times, that there's a treasure buried under this bridge, and I wanted to retrieve the treasure." So one of the police officers starts laughing, and he says, "You have a dream, and you're listening to this dream? I had a dream last night that there's a guy by the name of Isaac from Krakow, that he has a treasure under his home. Do you see me with a shovel under his home digging for the treasure? No, it was a dream." When Rabbi Isaac heard that, he says, "Am I kidding? Why am I checking over here if there's a treasure outside under my house?" And he headed back under his home and dug under his home, and he found the treasure. That's the story of the synagogue in Prague, in Krakow. Good. So that's the story. What's the message of the story? Sometimes, yes, sometimes, and so many people are looking for treasures. They're looking for spirituality. They're looking for something greater beyond themselves, which is as we will see, something to be expected based on our makeup, but they look everywhere else besides within themselves. So we have to look within ourselves. There's a story which I've also shared before about it's one of the living Torahs where they have the videos of people sharing their encounters with the Rebbe. I heard this story years and years ago before it was published by the person who shared the story. And it was a story, I must have been a kid or a teenager when I heard the story. And it was an eye-opener for me. And I think it's very relevant in this way. And here's the story. The story was that there was a guy by the name, his name will come back to me. But the story was that he was a professor somewhere, or he was studying somewhere, he was away, and he had questions in faith that were really so difficult to him, they were so debilitating, they were really bothering him so much that he questioned his faith and he questioned life, and he was going through a very, very difficult time. His name was Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch, I think, Weinberger. That was his name. So Rabbi Weinberger says that he heard about the Rebbe, wasn't a chassid, but he decided that, he was at a point in his life where he needed serious help, and he called up the Rebbe's office. And to him, this was an emergency. When you get the doctor's office and they tell you, well, we can make an appointment for you in 6 months, and you feel it's an emergency and you need someone tomorrow, you get very nervous. So he called up, and he doesn't say who he is or where he's in. I think he just said this is a Jew. He called up and he says, this is a Jew from Maryland. There's a Jew from Maryland, and I'm calling. I need to have a question that's very urgent that I need to give to ask the Rebbe. So I think it was Rabbi Chadikov, one of the Rebbe's assistants, says, I could set an appointment for you. You can come back in a couple of months or whatever. We'll set up an appointment. You can come and talk to the Rebbe. Those days, the Rebbe was taking personal audiences. You can come back. So he says, no, this is urgent. I need an answer. So Rabbi Chadikov had a direct line to the Rebbe. He called up the Rebbe's office, and he tells the Rebbe that he has someone on the phone, and this is apparently urgent. And he says a Jew from Maryland who has this urgent request, and he hears the Rebbe on the other line saying to the assistant, tell him to go and see a guy by the name of Weinberger. There's a Jew in Maryland by the name of Weinberger, and he can answer your questions. And he's listening, thinking to himself, who? Who's this guy? And he was in such shock. He put down the phone, and he realized, besides the Rebbe's knowledge of who was on the phone, without him giving his identity, the Rebbe was telling him, and I think this is the point here, that we could search and search all over to find something greater, something beyond ourselves. But you don't have to look beyond yourself. The answers, spirituality is within ourselves. And that we have to, if you want to find something deeper, you can go within yourself, and that's what we're going to do tonight. So we have to define ourselves, and that's where the first exercise comes in. We have an exercise here. How would you define spirituality? So those who have a book, you could write it in your book. If you don't have a book, take a piece of paper and a pencil, just mark down, how would you define spirituality? No, excuse me, not that one. We are on page 39. Record as many words as possible as accurately describe you. So let's describe ourselves. Okay? Just words that describe you. Okay? Put down words that describe you. And just for those who are on Zoom, I believe you could unmute yourself if at any point you have a question or if you want to make a comment when people around the table are discussing things. Just try to keep yourselves, which you guys have already done, to keep yourselves on mute for the rest of the class, except when we're having discussions, so that we don't have echoes in the background that sometimes happen on these Zoom platforms. Do we have any volunteers yet to share any words to describe yourself? If you wrote down anything personal, you don't need to, just a couple of the words. Elaine, would you like to share? No? They're too personal. Okay. Anybody want to share any words about yourself? If not, we will just continue.
Bravo.
Yeah? Okay, Alan will.
Some
Words, just words. Yeah. No sentences.
Thoughtful, clueless, unaware, aware, intelligent, and generous.
Okay, so a lot of those are spiritual. That's interesting. Anybody else want to share words that you use to describe yourself? Okay, if not, we will continue. Compassionate. Okay, good. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those are feelings. So a lot of times when people are writing things to describe yourselves, and you could look at your list, some of them would be more materialistic things. Like if you had to create a resume, the first thing you might write, I mean, today we might write male, female, or other, right? It's a very important question. So we have to describe ourselves. So gender would be a materialistic thing. Maybe it's also more spiritual today. A job, a hobby, things you enjoy, more materialistic. Faith, convictions, and feelings are going to be more on things that you can't really quantify, are going to be more of spirit, more spiritually, more things that are more spiritual. Again, these are not really the spiritual, the spirituality that we're really defining tonight. But what I wanted to do, to start off with, recognizing that we have within ourselves both the material side of ourselves, and we also have more of a spiritual side of ourselves. So if we go to text number 1, let's go back to basics. If we want to really understand who we are, we have to really go back to the basics. And when I say go back to basics, if you want to know who you are, back to basics as a Jew is going back to the first class that you would learn in Hebrew school. For some, it would have been the first class, maybe the second, or for some, you may have skipped this class, or your Hebrew school may have skipped this class. But it's very important to read Genesis chapter 2, right? Would that make sense? That's the beginning, the very beginning of the Torah. And what does it say there? Like text number 1, we're on page 40. God formed the human from the dust of the ground, and he breathed into the human's nostrils the soul of life. So we see here that when it comes to the animal and the human being, they were created quite differently. When God created the animal was created body and soul together. Now, we discussed last week that every single element in this world has spirituality. Hashem created the world with the 10 utterances, with words, which means that within every the physical matter is spirituality that's keeping it going, right? I think I mentioned this last week, but the idea is that everything has spirituality. An animal was created body and soul together. When God created the body of the animal, he also created the soul, and the animal was living the moment it was created. However, when it comes to the human being, Hashem created us, the first human being, And each and every one of us created in that way that our body and soul are separate. First, God created the body, then God blew into Adam's nostrils, creating life, giving him the soul. So the first thing to understand and to recognize is that the soul of the human being, unlike animals and other elements of this world, which also have a soul, the soul of the human being is something separate, created separate. But what is the identity of the soul? So if you look at the animal has a single consciousness because the body and soul are created together. The human being has a dual consciousness, which pulls us in two directions. Sometimes we're feeling very materialistic and we want to just enjoy that ice cream. And sometimes we want to be sitting without any connection to material and physical things, maybe listening to our favorite music, doing something that sort of tears us away from the material world. Why do we want to do that? Why do we come to a meditation class? Because we want to have that experience. Why do we feel that need for that experience of being in touch with something more spiritual? Is because we have this dual consciousness, this soul that is not completely one with the body. It was created separate. It's a separate part of us. So what is the soul? What is the identity of our soul, self? What is that soul consciousness? It's beyond whatever we spoke about last week. It's beyond the intellect and it's beyond the emotions.
Rabbi?
Yes, sure.
I've never heard that animals have a soul.
Everything has a soul. The spiritual part that's keeping them going, that gives them life. The chair has a soul. The table, yeah. The inanimate has a soul. If it didn't have a soul, it wouldn't. Now, when we think of soul, we think of the soul of the human being. So the makeup of the soul of the animal is very different than the human being. And the reason why we're not really able to describe or explain the soul of the animal, because it's one with the animal. I can't really describe the soul of the chair because it's one with the chair. Maybe Kabbalists or spiritual people, they're able to see beyond the material world. And we'll talk about one of the kinds of meditations that we'll talk about tonight, where they're able to separate themselves from the spiritual world, and maybe they're able to see the energy, the soul within the rest of creation. But for us, the most important thing is to recognize that we have a soul. What is that soul? So the soul in nature is spiritual, and what is the soul of the human being? Is one that wants to live for a higher purpose. We'll use the best example of a soul, and in any class you're going to go to, they're going to give you the same example, is a flame, right? And actually tonight I was thinking of bringing a flame just to enhance the class and having a visual and having a candle on the table, but I got caught up and I forgot to bring it. But the flame is very important, because flame is a metaphor for the soul. How is a flame a metaphor for the soul? Let's see if anybody wants to give us, anybody on Zoom that want to give your insight on why the flame is a good metaphor for the soul. Julie, would you like to share something? Just a thought. Think about the flame. What's unique about the flame, and why? Let's think about some of the qualities of a flame, right? Anyone? Alan?
It has to be lit.
Julie. It has to be lit. Okay, good. You have to light a flame. That is true. You have to light a flame. So who lights the flame of the soul? Hashem, right? When Hashem blew into the nostrils of Adam, he lit that flame. Very good. Okay. Any other examples?
I look at the yard side candle. You think about the soul of the person who you're lighting the candle for,
Right, but you go ahead.
and the light goes up,
Oh, the light goes up.
and you hope that they're with you.
So the soul, the purpose of the soul. Let's have a look. The reason why we light the yahrzeit candle, it was a very good example. Let's go into text number 2 and 3, and we will talk about the candle. Unless anybody else has a comment to say about the flame. Okay, let's move on to text number 2 and 3. Most of the texts are very short, so those who don't have your books, you'll be able to follow anyway. There's one longer text, and hopefully I'll read it slower so that we can get through it because it's part of tonight's meditation. Text number 2. This is actually from the morning blessings. We spoke about the importance of saying blessings last week. My God, the soul that you have placed within me is pure. You created it, you formed it, you breathed it into me. Text number 3 from Proverbs. The human soul, Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam, the human soul is the candle of God. That is the reason why we light a yahrzeit candle. Because we recognize that the human soul is the candle of God, and if the soul is a candle, so then we want to light a candle to recognize the soul on the times of the year that we're thinking about the souls of those who have passed on. So there are many reasons why a soul is significant. Perhaps a soul, just like that a flame is significant. Perhaps a flame doesn't get diminished, right? When you light a candle and you take that flame and now you light another candle, that original flame, that original candle wasn't diminished, the light wasn't diminished. If I take some of my coffee and I share it with you, I have less in my cup. So it's very spiritual, and there's a lot of symbolism in the flame of the soul, that the soul is made out of many compartments. When you share from your soul, you don't diminish. You know, if I'm going to create joy now in the class, or if I'm going to share this class with you, right? I'm not diminishing my knowledge. I'm only increasing my knowledge when I teach. Every time I teach, I become I understand and the material better, and a lot of times in a much deeper way than I understood it before I gave the class.
Fire connection.
So that's the fire connection. But the most important one, which you mentioned, is, let's look at text number 4. And we are on page 42 for those who have your textbooks. The nature of a flame is to flicker upward. And that's what you were saying, Marsha. Indicating that the flame intrinsically seeks to part from its wick in order to unite with its source above. Similarly, the human soul naturally desires and yearns to separate itself and escape its body in order to unite with its origin and source in God, the blessed source of all life. So the soul always wants to unite with God. So if the soul was the breath of God and a very part of God, therefore the soul always wants to go up. That now we can understand that the nature of our spirituality. When Judaism speaks of spirituality, we're talking about the soul, awareness of our soul. That's really what spirituality is. It's not only awareness of our soul, but it's awareness of the soul that's within the world around us. In order to be able to recognize the soul in the world around us, we want to be able to recognize first and foremost the soul that's within us. The spirituality that's within us. Because when we could recognize our soul and that who we really are is spirituality, then I could start seeing the world around me in a different light with my spiritual lens rather than my material lens. So if the true self of the human being is spirituality, why is it that we're not focused on spirituality all the time? And the answer is because our body and our soul is affected by the world around us. So our soul is affected by our body, and the body is affected by the world around us, which is more materialistic, and that affects us. Every so often, we experience certain things, and we're drawn to certain things that are more spiritual, like music and art and so on. And the reason why we're drawn to those things is simply because our soul is spiritual in nature, and therefore it is drawn to things that are more delicate, more abstract, more spiritual. So now that we have defined spirituality, for the rest of tonight's class, we are going to experience some spirituality. Okay, so just to recap what we've spoken about till now, is number one, we recognize that we are mostly focused on materialism because of this dual consciousness. We also are drawn to spirituality because our soul is spiritual in nature. And if you want to find spirituality, if you want to live for a higher purpose, you don't have to go out and find it in some book in the library, but you have to find it within yourself, within your soul. So those are the takeaways from what we've done so far. We will now continue with video 1 of our lesson. So the definition of spirituality is, as I said, awareness of the divine presence. And now we have the first video of our lesson with a meditation.
We have two voices speaking to us from within. One voice is our lower order self, Nefesh Bahamis. The Nefesh Bahamis urges us to live a life of pleasure, of ease, getting what we want whenever we want it. The other voice is the voice of the Nefesh Elokis. That's our godly self. That's the self that seeks connectedness with people in love, connectedness with the world and its elements, feeling fulfilled, connectedness with Hashem. Gently close your eyes and just become aware of your inner self, your inner quiet, that place you can escape to, because it's always a place where you have your own sense of self. Allow that special place to be your refuge, that place of inner sanctity, totally protected, always safe. As you step out of that space, become aware of your two inner voices. Listen to the voice of the Nefesh Bahamis. Note what it tells you. It says, you're insecure in this world. You need to shore yourself up. You need more and more and more. Otherwise, you're unsafe. build walls around you, wealth, create superficial pleasures because life is short. The Nefesh Bahamis is the voice of the ego. Now listen to the truer voice of the Nefesh Elokis, the voice that tells you that everything possesses truth and meaning, that your happiness and joy comes from connecting truly to people, to the world around you, by connecting to the inner selves, the soulful center. The voice that tells you pleasure doesn't come from material acquisition. It comes from the smile of appreciation for having helped someone, for the small gift that you give your grandchild, for the blue sky that you wake up to. In life, choose which voice you are going to listen to. It may be that you don't need to have a battle within, a fight between them. You might even be able to transform the Nefesh Bahamis into an ally, giving its energy the capacity to do the right things. But always allow yourself to recognize that your true voice is the voice of the Nefesh Elokis. In so doing, your life will be replete with happiness and fulfillment.
Okay. Let's open up our eyes. He forgot to say that at the end of the video. Let's open up our eyes and let's try to continue this journey. That is a very good meditation in recognizing the materialistic parts of our lives, the body and the soul, most importantly, our soul. So how do we meditate? And how do we become more aware of that godly soul? So he gave some, in this meditation, we had some very general ideas. In a certain way, it was a little bit similar to what we did last week. We're going to try to do something very different tonight. I want to talk about two kinds of meditations. If you remember last week when I introduced all the 6 weeks of our course, I spoke about several kinds of meditations. And every week we're going to go through different meditations, 3 different meditations. So this week we're going to go through 2 meditations. The first one that we're going to talk about, if a Jew is on an island, he might have one home, but he's going to have 2 synagogues. Why 2 synagogues? Because you always got to have the one place the synagogue that you don't go to, right? This is the place I don't go to. So we are going to talk about 2 kinds of meditations. One that you could try at home. The other one I don't recommend it. So let's get the first one out of the way. The one that we don't recommend. If there are some people who try to focus on this kind of meditation, but it's not recommended. I'm going to talk about it very briefly, but then we'll get into the second kind of meditation. The first kind of meditation is called hitbodedut. And hitbodedut comes from the word badad, which means seclusion. And this was an ancient practice where, in order to recognize our inner self, what are we going to do? We're going to distract ourselves from the material world. And that's very important in order to be able to truly discover spirituality. But this is a very advanced method. If we jump to text number 6, there were many people who, as it says in text number 5, I'm not going to read every single text, but as we talk about text number 5, there were many who practiced this kind of meditation called hitbodedut, where they secluded themselves. It's a very advanced method where one transcends the physical world, the physical material experience, to experience something even deeper, and where they're able to feel one with God. Let's read text number 6. It is recorded in many of the works of the medieval rabbis that seclusion, which is hitbodedut, page 44, separation from everything mundane, which is called perishut, and devotional clinging, devekut, were practiced by the pious Jews. This is to say that when they were alone, they would empty their minds of all worldly concerns and connect their minds with the master of all existence. The famed Kabbalist, the Arizal, taught that this practice is far more beneficial for the soul than study, and that every person should practice this seclusion meditation according to their ability, either once a week, once a fortnight, or at the very least, once a month. So he wanted people to try to use this method of meditation. The challenge is that in order to really experience this kind of meditation, you can't just clear your mind as they do with some other meditations. It's not about clearing your mind, because if you're going to clear your mind, like I said last week about that guy in Cairns in Australia, right, who ended up clearing his mind, and then he saw, and to him spirituality was this Chinese dancer, because that's the image that came into his mind. You're not going to reach your inner self and experience God and spirituality if you're going to clear your mind. You may feel better, but you're not going to discover that was good for last week's class. You're not going to discover your deeper self and really reach something higher and greater than yourself, than your the self that we're used to seeing every day and experiencing every day. If I want to experience something deeper, I have to fill my mind with intellectual concepts and then go out and meditate and seclude myself, meditating on those spiritual concepts. Most of us can't do that today. Not only that, but even someone who could, there are some dangers to it. There are some dangers to meditating in this way, because it's not for everyone. Again, because of our lack of knowledge and ability to comprehend and spiritual matters. And so I'm going to leave text number 7 for you to read on your own. But text number 8 tells us a very interesting story from the Talmud. We all like stories. So here's a story from the Talmud about some sages who decided to meditate in this way. 4 individuals entered the orchard, which is the Pardes. They explored the Torah's mystical secrets. They are Ben Azai, Ben Zoma, Acher, and Rabbi Akiva. Ben Azai gazed at the divine presence, and he died. Ben Zoma gazed at the divine presence and became crazed. Acher gazed and chopped down the shoots of saplings, meaning he became a heretic. And Rabbi Akiva emerged safely. The Rebbe explains that the reason why Rabbi Akiva emerged safely was because he understood how to take the ideas, the meditations, and the mystical concepts that he meditated on. He was able to bring them into practice. And part of the challenge is, if we don't know how to bring them into practice and we're just going and meditating on ideas, we walk away. Many people, unfortunately, meditate. They live a calmer life, but they end up being less sociable, doing less for others. You have people who don't meditate so much, but they go out and they're volunteering and they're calling friends and they're doing for others and they're making a difference in this world. And you have people who spend their life meditating and trying to live a calmer, peaceful life, which has tremendous value, but they end up that they forget the most important thing, and that is the impact that we have to make in this world. Rabbi Akiva recognized the impact that we have to make in this world, and because he recognized that, he actually survived this most highest way and deepest way of experiencing this kind of meditation. So it's not for everyone. It's not something that we should try at home. If we go to page 48, we have here the difference between hitpodedut and hitponenut, which is the second kind of meditation that I want to talk about tonight. The one that we could take home and we could use. Now, for the second kind of meditation, it is also important that we have concepts. Again, this is not about clearing our minds. This is about filling our minds with new realities, taking ideas and recognizing that this is the true reality, the deeper reality of ourselves and the world around us. Because again, as I said before, the moment we recognize that we are, our true self is spirituality, and that's the makeup of the world, we start looking at everything around us in a different way. We start looking at the world in a spiritual way. And that's what we want to accomplish. Because when we look at the world in a spiritual way, there are tremendous benefits, and I'll finish off with talking about some of the benefits that we have by doing so. So, by the way, in the first meditation, just to mention, a lot of the prophecy, those who prophesized, and many of the Kabbalistic mystical experiences, we think about the Kabbalists and so on, these were, and there's something else on the screen here as well, soul elevation happened through this first kind of meditation, the hitbodedut, the seclusion, where we separate ourselves from the world. The second kind of meditation, and this, which is recommended, is hitbonenut. And that comes from the word bina, which means understanding. And that's why it's something that we could actually do. Every single one of us has the ability, obviously, everyone on their own level, but we all have that ability to meditate in this way. So what is this meditation? So let's have a look at text number 9 and 10. A central foundation of this study of mysticism is to repeatedly spend considerable time in deep contemplation on the subject matter being studied. This is the practice that is referred to as hisponenut, which means to firmly visualize the concept and to analyze it deeply. So the idea is to have a concept that we learn from either Kabbalah or Hasidic teachings, a godly concept, a spiritual concept,
Okay.
a soulful concept. We're on page 49.
Okay.
a soulful concept. And to take that concept and to visualize it to the best of our ability, to really analyze it and think it over until that idea starts to become something very real in our lives. That's what hitbonenut is, and that's why it comes from the word bina, which means understanding. So whatever idea you're learning about, you want to try to meditate on it and understand it in your own terms. And again, understanding means to connect to it. You really, truly understand it and visualize it. Text number 10, you shall take it to heart, verse in Deuteronomy. This is a positive commandment to know God. We are enjoined to investigate and develop an appreciation of God's unity and not rely solely on received tradition. So we have to learn and develop an appreciation for God, and the way to do that is by studying. However, since the spiritual understanding of the divine is abstract and not easily understood, the verse emphasizes that we must take it to heart. The Hebrew term for take it in this verse more literally means to return it, indicating that we must repeatedly contemplate the concept until it's settled in our mind. The term take to heart always refers to a matter that requires profound concentration and extra focused thinking. So the idea of taking something to our mind, Vashivota elavavecha, is not only to take it to our mind, but to return it to our mind, to really make it something very real. And that's the idea of hitbonenut. So again, it's not about clearing our mind. It's not about thinking about positive thoughts that we spoke about last week. So that could be a meditation that we do every day or a couple times a week. We should try to do that every morning when we wake up, Modani, do the meditation, or when we say the blessings in the morning, to do the meditation that we spoke about last week of thinking positive thoughts. This is a whole new level where we're taking ideas of spirituality, recognizing the world of spirituality and meditating on them, thinking about them, making them real in our lives so that we start to see our lives differently. We start to be more in touch with spirituality. And again, there are tremendous benefits to it. So we need to experience this. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to try to, I'm going to read a text. I'm going to read it slowly because not everybody has the text in front of them. And the ideas that I share in this text are going to be the ideas that we are going to meditate on tonight. Being that not everybody has the text in front of them, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. Instead of reading the text first, I'm actually going to give a little overview of the text first. Okay? This I would do it the other way. And one of the ideas is that everybody on their own go through the text and try to see the highlight ideas. But since not everybody has the text, it's going to be hard to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through using this slide here. We have three ideas, three central themes in this text. And then I'll read the text and it'll be easier for everybody to follow along, even those who don't have the text. As I mentioned before, everything has a divine spirit. Every experience that we have has a divine spirit within it. Every experience has a body and a soul. So that's the first step of this meditation, to recognize that everything has a soul. Let's use experiences in our life. And if you look on, just if you wanted to go ahead and look at page 56, there's an exercise there. Identify the body and soul of the following scenario. So let's do this together. Dinner with a spouse or a close friend. What's the body of that experience? The food, right? Even you sitting there, right? Okay. What's the soul?
The connection between
The
us.
connection. Very good. The relationship that we have. Good. The friendship, the relationship, that's the soul.
Material is the helps us to get there.
Yeah. Okay, one second. Let's just move this a little bit so I can see everybody. Okay. So this the example of dinner with a spouse or a close friend. You have the body, which is the food or yourselves, and the connection is the soul. Disciplining a child. What is the body? The body is the discipline, the firmness, right? The soul of the discipline is the love that the child may not see right now, but the love and the growth that you want to ultimately see from that child, that's the soul. Exercising in the gym, the body is, of course, the workout, right? And the soul, which is the dieting, is the same thing, right? The soul is the health enhancement that comes as a result. Shaking hands on a deal. Example, physical is the shaking the hand. The spiritual is the soul is the agreement and the trust in one another, right? Okay, so of course these are only metaphors. We could use also if I'm looking at a if I'm looking, we'll give you an example. I had a picture of a painting. If you look at a painting, and it's on the next slide. So a painting has two parts to it. It has the different elements of the painting, the colors, the shapes, but then it has the story and the inspiration that painting is giving you, and that is the soul of the painting. So everything has within it a body, but it also has a soul. The world is God's canvas. So the world is God's canvas. That means the world is the body, but behind it is a story, is spirituality. Okay, that's the first important point that is being made in our meditation. Point number 2. The soul is its source of life. I want to use an example that I use often. I use this in the context of trying to explain why for bat mitzvah we won't do the same thing for a boy and a girl to experience the bar and bat mitzvah. And so the metaphor that I often give when the question comes up with a mom, a dad, and a child that come and want to know, what about the Torah reading for the girl? And I think in this context, we could appreciate it more. That if we are more than a body, if we also have a soul. So let's use a metaphor of two siblings. This is what I use. Two siblings. One is extremely athletic, and the other one is extremely artistic. The one who's athletic wins a race. Okay, wins a race and achieves a whatever the great achievement and they come home holding a medal that they got, this trophy, and they come home with this trophy, with this pride. And the other sibling, who's the artistic child, looks at the other kid with jealousy and says, I also want to have a medal. So the mom goes out and buys a medal for the child, a trophy for the child who's artistic. So now the child who's artistic now takes the medal, that trophy, and is very proud to hold up the trophy. Now, if you're a little bit more mature, you understand that you're having a trophy without an achievement is completely meaningless. If you had an achievement with your artistic talent, you'll get a trophy too, because the trophy is the symbol of the soul. It's a body to symbolize the soul. Boys and girls, according to Torah and according to Judaism, have a different kind of soul, a male soul and a female soul. The male soul needs its trophy. It needs its kind of energy and things to work with, to develop, its exercise, its vitamins. And the female soul needs its vitamins. So giving both the same, because one has one, you want to have everybody have equal, doesn't really work if you're focusing on soul. If you're focusing on body only, 100%, you're right. If everybody should be the same. If you're focusing on body, everybody should be the same. Everybody should have the same trophy. Everybody should have the same equal rights, etc., and be doing the same thing. There should not be one president. It should be every person in the United States should be a president. Every single person in the United States should be the mailman, and everybody in the United States should be cleaning the gutters, because we're all equal. And we should all be doing every single job. But we understand that different people have different jobs, especially, more importantly, when we're talking about the spiritual. Because if we're talking about the physical, what difference does it make? Right? The Chabad rabbis are, do more than one job. People always laugh when they see me do something else. Oh, you do that as well, right? Because you do whatever is needed. But when it comes to soul, you can't do that. When it comes to the body, to material things, you could do many different things. It's not a contradiction. When it comes to the soul, you have to do things that relate to the soul. So that's the second thing. That's whatever we experience has to be related to the soul, which is the source of life. So that's the second important part of this meditation. And the third part of this meditation is that if our true self is not our body, but rather our soul, what should be the thing that we value most in life is not our body. What should be the thing that we spend the most time on every single day beyond our work, that we, of the things that we have to do to survive? So if I have 5 hours in the evening between my work and going to sleep, what should the majority of that time be spent on? Materialistic things or spiritual things? So if I understand that spirituality is the most important part of me, then I have to change how I behave and what I do. The function of my life has to be different. So we go through these things. So number one, we recognize that everything has a soul. The soul is the source of life. And number three, that spirituality should be valued. Once we have this, then we could meditate. So let's go and read text number 13. And we read it slowly. And basically, it's going to cover these ideas. Everything that exists is comprised of a physical form and a spiritual, divine energy that creates and animates the entity's physical existence. Page 53. Thank you. 54. Okay. Text 13. This is clearly demonstrable in animals and humans. They have an animating spirit. If the spirit were to leave their body, the body would no longer be classified as alive, and the body would begin to decompose and turn to dust. That is because the very existence of the body hinges upon the spiritual energy that emanates it. The same is true of vegetation. It also possesses an animating spirit. Even inanimate objects possess some sort of energizing spirit that keeps them in existence and prevents their disappearance. Based on this awareness, spirituality is referred to as good and life, because it is a living force that remains alive and in existence forever. Whereas physical matter is referred to as negative and death, because it decomposes and ceases to exist without the spirit within it, and it has no means of existing independently. From my flesh, I can perceive God, says Job, meaning that human experience informs our understanding of God. We intuitively sense that we have a life force that provides us with our life, and that it is our primary identity, and that were our soul to leave our body, the body would be left like an inanimate rock and eventually decompose and disappear. The same is true with all that exists. The entire cosmos and all its contents exist due to a divine spirit that gives existence to everything. That divine light and force is the entire life and sustaining power of all that exists. If it departs, all existence will revert to absolute nothingness. Now the Torah tells us, before we finish the last paragraph here, because this is what this is, we can go to it afterwards. Let's finish it first. If we meditate on this idea, we will realize that the material existence of each entity is entirely dependent on the spiritual force within it, and that physicality is nullified before the presence of the divine light that is its source of existence. This realization will inspire a powerful desire, love, and yearning for the divine, just like we said, the flame goes upwards. We will no longer desire that which exists only superficially, and which is in fact death, decomposing and disappearing. All we will desire is to attach the divinity that is true life and the mainstay of existence. So, if we could truly meditate on this idea, that the soul is the real part of our life, and that everything has a soul, and that that's the true value in everything around us, then ultimately what's going to happen? When I look at something material, I won't want it because that's my goal in life, to achieve that materialistic goal. I'll take that because it helps me in my spiritual goals. What is my goal? It's not to achieve wealth. It's not to achieve fame. It's not to achieve materialistic things, but rather to achieve spirituality, a connection to God, because that is ultimately the purpose, my true self and my purpose of living. In text number 14, it tells us how to take this meditation and the idea is to bring it into this world, to apply it to this world. And it's very interesting that the Torah tells us one of the most interesting verses that seem to tell us absolutely nothing unless you look at it from a deeper lens, with a deeper lens. What does it say? It says in Deuteronomy, "This day I call upon heaven and earth as witnesses that I have warned you. I have set before you life and death, and blessing and the curse. You should choose life, so that you and your offsprings will live." Really? One second. Go back here. Oh, I took out the slide. Okay. So the idea is that the Torah tells us, the Torah tells us that you have to choose life. I'm giving you life and death. Now choose life. What does that mean? Does that mean I should make sure not to be hit by a car?
Helps.
Make sure I take my vitamins every day? What does it mean to choose life? The idea is, in order to choose life, you have to recognize what life is. Life is not that material life, because that's not real life. Our body is not real life. Our body is just a glove to our soul. Our true self, and the true self of everything that is in existence, is not the body, is the soul. And so when Torah tells us that I've given you life and death, I've given you the opportunity. I think this is one of the most beautiful verses.
What page?
Page 57. I've given you the opportunity to see life and to see death. To focus on spirituality or to focus on things that decay and don't last forever, which is materialism. Which one are you going to choose? The Torah tells us. You should choose life. And that is in the reach, in the ability of every single one of us. If we could meditate on these ideas, if we could meditate on these ideas and come to the realization that everything has a soul, that the soul is the source of life. Read over this text again and again and think about this text. Then we could start to see life differently, and we'll talk about the benefits after we come through. We do our next meditation. I'm going to talk about the benefits, and with that, we will conclude tonight's class. So, one last meditation.
Spirituality means to sense viscerally how meaningful every single moment and item of life is, which means to enter into a relationship soul to soul, and we can do so with everything that we find in our daily activities. So gently close your eyes and just become aware of a source of light in your head, pleasant, warm, spreading throughout your headspace, enlightening, animating, and flowing down into your lower body, feeling comfortable and warm. Intensify that light source so it spreads through your limbs, allowing them to feel animated, special, with Hashem's light, that light which is your soul's light. Everything possesses a soul spark. The stone also has a soul. If you peer into the stone and are able to see molecules, atoms, smaller particles even, all these are energies that are manifested. Beneath each of these lies a spiritual force. The spiritual force of a stone is nefesh. A flower also possesses a soul spark, but it's more developed. It's called ruach, allowing the flower to have locomotion, movement, growth, inclination towards the sun. It has both nefesh and ruach. The animal has an even more advanced soul system. It has the nefesh to maintain its physical state, ruach providing it with animation, movement, but also neshama, which provides it with rudimentary communication capacity. And then there's the human being, who possesses all three, plus the level of soul known as chaya, the level of soul that provides consciousness, awareness of the flow of time, present, past, and future, hopes, aspirations, values, beliefs. We encounter all four levels in life. Allow that encounter to be soul to soul, recognizing that everything possesses value, godliness, purpose. And only by relating spiritually to the essence of that soul do we connect meaningfully. Live a deep and meaningful life.
Okay, you can open up your eyes. Okay, so let's what's the takeaway? Spirituality, number one, isn't out there somewhere. It's in India or in other places. It's in our it's the inner soul of everything, and it's everywhere. Spirituality is everywhere. It's all around us. So if you looked at the cup, or you looked at the computer, or you looked at your phone as something material, everything is spiritual. Everything has a soul. I like that bird. I have one like that I think is doing just that to the tree outside. Okay. What do we want to do? We want to practice this and do this kind of meditations regularly. Now, again, in order to meditate regularly, we have to study these ideas. Because again, it's not about clearing our mind or coming up with positive ideas. It's about filling them up with recognizing the spirituality that's around us. And in order to do that, we have to study either Hasidus or Kabbalah. Hasidus is much easier to understand. So books like the Tanya is a good example of things that we could meditate. In fact, we try to study daily an idea from Hasidic philosophy and meditate on those ideas. It's not always possible every single day, but at least in yeshiva we would do it every day. Hopefully in our lives we could do it every day, if not every day, a couple times a week, where we could actually take an idea and focus on it. You might do it daily for a couple minutes, and maybe once a week for a longer period of time. One of the things that I've tried to do lately, that I introduced this year, is the Hasidic idea. I didn't do it this past Shabbos on the Parsha, where we take an idea, a soulful idea, where we could talk about it, and hopefully afterwards we could think about it and meditate on it, so that these ideas become reality in our lives, because that is the true reality of our lives, is the spiritual aspects of our lives. And again, it's the idea is to think about it on your own, to take an idea and to think about it, and the more we think about it, the more it becomes real. Now, some of the benefits that we have have been recognized by researchers of mental health over the past 25 years. There are many, many benefits of being spiritual. Besides the fact that Torah tells us that's who we really are, there are real practical benefits in the kind of lives that we live. The positive emotions, the hope, the gratitude, compassion and joy. We have a whole few pages on page 60 of different benefits that come from spirituality. And the only way to become more spiritual is to meditate regularly. And to do that, again, one has to study more Hasidic philosophy. So this is something that we're doing every week now, and hopefully something that we can continue and do more of in the future. There are so many books on Hasidic philosophy that we could study. Much has been written in English. There's much online that you could find. There's a lot of stuff. So it's something that if we can incorporate and bring into our lives, there'll be tremendous, tremendous benefit. So again, if I could just recap everything, instead of using the video, just to recap together with what we've done tonight, is we've recognized what spirituality is, that spirituality is our true self. That's what we mean when we define spirituality. We're not talking about something that's out there far away that we want to try to connect to. Because if you're going to look again, if you look far away and you think of spiritual, a lot of times people think about, God as someone out there. I remember when I was 7 years old, the first time I flew on a plane, and I was looking out, may have been 6 or 7, and I was looking out the window for my grandfather. And my grandfather, I knew they always told us as kids, got it, that he's in heaven. He went to heaven. So my first plane ride, right? Where was I looking? I was looking out the window. Well, where is he? And then I realized, no, this is the sky. So I had to figure out that heaven is somewhere else. But when we talk about in terms of God, that God is looking down, there is some truth to it because God is wholly beyond us. But God is not, spirituality is not something that's far out there. It's beyond us because it's greater than us, but it's actually within us. So if we want to find that spirituality, we have to look within. That's how we're going to find it. So it's very, very important. So that's and how do we accomplish it? We could accomplish it by either hitbodedut, which is seclusion. You can go study now for 2-3 years Kabbalah and Hasidic philosophy every day, and then maybe you could go. I don't know if 2-3 years is enough, but maybe you want to do more than that. Elaine is going to take me up on it, and go and sit out there in the forest and meditate and seclude yourself. It's besides it being dangerous today for other reasons, spiritually it could be dangerous. And there are some today who do focus on that kind of a meditation, like those who are familiar with Breslov. They meditate using hitbodedut, where they seclude themselves. A lot of times they use music in other ways, but to separate themselves, keep themselves detached. But that's not the way that we want to focus on. What we want to use is hitbonenut, where we take an idea of spirituality, recognizing what the true world is. The world around us is spiritual in nature, and understanding that spirituality, and then meditating. And the more we meditate it, the more real it becomes. And then we can live a spiritual life, a life filled with joy, because if you're not focused anymore on materialistic things, I don't have to worry about tomorrow. I only worry about my spiritual self, and that is only growing stronger and stronger, regardless of what I eat today or eat tomorrow. And we worry less, we have more hope, we have more joy, more gratitude, etc., etc. And I think these are the benefits of tonight's meditation.